In the 90s, McDonald's launched a massive marketing campaign in America. This campaign was called the Monopoly game. When you buy a meal, you get a card, and this card might have a prize. The prizes could be electronics, cars, boats, and cash, ranging from $1,000 to $1 million. The biggest prize was $1 million, which everyone wanted to win. So people started buying more, and McDonald's sales skyrocketed. They began repeating the campaign multiple times a year. But what they discovered later was that from 1989 to 2001, there wasn't a single legitimate winner of the $1 million prize. There were 2 winners over the years, but both were involved in fraud. The person responsible for this massive fraud was a man known as Uncle Jerry. Uncle Jerry managed to steal more than $25 million worth of prize money over 12 years. So how did he do it? How did no one discover him all these years? And what was his connection to the mafia? That's what we're going to uncover in this story. Follow along and enjoy. Welcome to my channel, Bedtime. Regarding the story, it starts with the FBI, specifically the Jacksonville office located in Florida. This office specialized in pursuing corruption cases, fraud, and corporate issues. In 2001, they received a call from an informant whose identity was unknown and not disclosed. This informant told them that McDonald's Monopoly game had been tampered with and gave them the names of 3 people who had won the $1 million prize over the past years. He said these individuals were related to each other, though their names and family names were different, so it wasn't immediately obvious that they were relatives. But when investigated, it turned out they were connected, and all of them had won the $1 million prize. This clearly couldn't have happened naturally. The anonymous informant also gave them the name of a person and said that he was the mastermind behind it, calling him Uncle Jerry. Now, the FBI agents began investigating whether it was possible that McDonald's game had been hacked in some way. They needed to confirm this. It was now 2001, and the game had been launched by McDonald's in 1987, meaning it had been running for 14 years, and every year they repeated it 2 or even 3 times. So, since when had this game been hacked? The first thing they needed to do was check all the previous winners, especially those who had won the grand prize of $1 million. So they gathered a list of the winners over the past 14 years. The shock came when they found that a large number of them were related, even if distantly. For example, you'd find one winner, and then the next winner would turn out to be the son of a cousin or niece, a distant relative but still a connection. As they continued to investigate, they kept discovering these family ties, and they were stunned. The likelihood of something like this happening was almost impossible. It was like being struck by lightning 1,000,000 times. At this point, they truly realized there was fraud involved, and someone had somehow hacked the game and taken control of the big prizes. The cards with valuable prizes, as we mentioned earlier, had various rewards of differing values. Most of the cards, of course, were not winners, and the smallest prizes were things like free meals. Then came the small electronics, followed by larger appliances like fridges, ovens, and TVs. After that, there were vacation packages, cars, boats, and finally the big money prizes, most of which were worth $1,000. However, there were also prizes of $10,000, $25,000, $100,000, and the highest prize of all, $1 million. This was the prize McDonald's always promoted heavily in their advertisements. After the FBI agents researched the winners further, they discovered that from 1989 to 2001, not a single legitimate winner of the $1 million prize existed, meaning this fraud operation had been running for 12 years. But they didn't have enough information to delve deeper into the case. All they had was the name Uncle Jerry, given to them by the anonymous informant. The investigators were puzzled. There were many missing pieces of information. They needed to figure out the weak points that allowed the fraudsters to steal the winning cards. They needed to know where these cards were printed, where the boxes and cups were made, and how McDonald's ensured the randomness of the process. The FBI hesitated to involve McDonald's management in the case because they feared someone within the company might be complicit. However, in the end, they had no other option. They didn't have any leads or places to obtain the missing information. So they had to contact McDonald's. They reached out to one of the senior executives, the head of security of the company, one of the top-ranking officials at McDonald's, and didn't disclose the full details. They simply told him that they needed to meet at their office to discuss an important matter. They asked him to bring 2 or 3 people, but not to tell anyone he was meeting with the FBI. True to their request, 3 of the top administrators at McDonald's boarded a plane to Jacksonville, where the FBI office was located. From the airport, they were taken directly to the office. The McDonald's executives sat down with the FBI, and during the meeting, the agents explained that their game had been compromised. Every winner of the major prizes over the years had won through fraud, and most of them were related despite having different names and surnames. The executives were stunned. The first thing they thought of was stopping the game immediately, especially since they were about to launch a new campaign. But the FBI agents quickly responded, No. That's the worst thing you could do. If the fraudsters realized something was wrong, they might escape. The FBI tried to convince the executives to launch the new campaign and let them monitor it to see if they could figure out how the fraud was being carried out. The executives were hesitant, and the meeting at the FBI office dragged on as they discussed the matter. Ultimately, the 3 executives present at the office said that this decision wasn't theirs alone. The entire board of directors needed to agree. Some FBI agents accompanied these executives, flew with them to McDonald's headquarters, and there they met with the senior board of directors. After the meeting, they agreed to launch the new Monopoly game campaign so the FBI could monitor it. Of course, the second goal of the meeting was for the agents to learn who was responsible for printing and distributing the game cards. The executives explained that they outsourced the work to an external marketing company called Simon Marketing. McDonald's had contracted Simon Marketing to manage all their promotional campaigns. Simon Marketing was responsible for printing the cards, distributing them, and ensuring everything was random. So now the FBI knew that the breach or loophole was definitely within Simon Marketing. Simon Marketing was one of McDonald's key partners. The marketing campaigns they ran for McDonald's were highly successful, and the strongest of these was the Monopoly game. The total value of the prizes reached $50 million, with the top prize being $1 million. Customers could obtain these cards either by purchasing meals and receiving cups or boxes with envelopes, or by buying magazines that partnered with McDonald's. These magazines contained Monopoly game cards, and if someone found a winning card, they would contact McDonald's, who had special procedures to verify that the cards were genuine and not counterfeit, especially for high-value prizes. We'll talk about these procedures later. The bottom line is that this game was extremely successful, boosting McDonald's sales by up to 40% every time they launched a new campaign. It was one of their most successful marketing campaigns, and the main goal for most people was the big prize of $1 million, even though they knew their chances of winning were very slim. Imagine if customers found out that their actual chances of winning these prizes were 0, because someone was intercepting the winning cards before they even reached the boxes. Anyway, as agreed with the FBI, McDonald's, in cooperation with Simon Marketing, launched the new campaign. Not much time passed before someone called to say they had found the $1 million card. McDonald's took the card and verified that it was indeed the real winning card. They announced this person as the new $1 million winner. Of course, the news reached the FBI immediately, and they began investigating this individual. His name was Michael Hoover, and he worked as a manager at a casino. May Allah guide you. The first thing the FBI did was begin wiretapping his calls. Of course, the FBI can wiretap any phone with the help of telecommunications companies, but first, they need to obtain permission from a federal judge and must have strong reasons or suspicions about the person they want to wiretap. So they began wiretapping his calls, but went several days without results. All the calls were ordinary. One of the agents had an idea. Winners of the prizes had to sign papers with McDonald's after claiming their prizes, and one of the conditions was that McDonald's could use their names and photos in advertisements. So this agent suggested to his colleagues, "Why don't we set up a fake interview with this winner, Michael Hoover? We'll coordinate with McDonald's to help us arrange a meeting under the pretense that we're from McDonald's and want to interview him about how he feels and what he plans to do with the money." No one will suspect anything unusual about this move. The FBI contacted the head of the marketing department at McDonald's and got permission from senior management to involve her in the matter. They informed her in detail that the Monopoly game had been compromised and that all the winners over the years had been fraudsters. Of course, the head of marketing was shocked, but after getting over her shock, she agreed to help. She contacted Michael Hoover and said, "We'd like to do an interview with you, if you don't mind. We'll come to you with a film crew and chat with you about your feelings and what you plan to do with the money as part of our marketing campaign." Michael agreed and set a date. On the agreed day, the film crew headed to Michael Hoover's house. The entire crew consisted of FBI agents, except for the head of McDonald's marketing department. There was also another team outside listening to everything. They entered Michael Hoover's house, and they even brought a large check written for $1 million, ostensibly to take pictures with him holding the check, a marketing stunt. These were real shots filmed by cameras. They then sat down with him and began asking questions. The first thing they asked him was to recount how he found the $1 million card. He began to tell them a fabricated story. He said, "I was lying on the beach, sleeping, and when I woke up, I found myself covered in sand. I got up, gathered my belongings, and went toward the water to wash myself. But by accident, some of my things fell into the water, including the magazine I had with me." Yes, as I mentioned earlier, the Monopoly game was included in some magazines in partnership with McDonald's. So the magazine fell into the sea. After gathering my remaining belongings and heading home, I stopped at a supermarket to buy some items. There, I saw the same magazine that I had lost and decided to buy it again. When I got home and opened the magazine, I was surprised to find the $1 million card inside. This was the story Michael Hoover told the FBI agents, not knowing they were FBI. To avoid raising suspicion, the FBI agents took the situation a step further. First, they took pictures of him holding the check at his house. Then they asked him to take them to the beach where he supposedly lost the first magazine. There, they took more pictures of him with the check. Afterward, they went with him to the supermarket where he bought the second magazine and took more pictures of him with the check, pretending they were creating a marketing story. In the end, they thanked him for his cooperation and left. The agents didn't get anything concrete from their meeting with Michael Hoover, but they hoped something would come out of this interview. Indeed, less than half an hour after the FBI left Michael Hoover's house, the wiretapping team heard a new call. Michael Hoover immediately called someone, and during the conversation, he said, "Hey, EG, they believed everything I told them. The story about going to the beach, losing the magazine, and then buying another one. They didn't suspect a thing. They just asked me a few questions and chatted casually, and then they left." The other person, named EG, replied, "Great job, buddy. You fooled them, and they have no clue." Meanwhile, the FBI was literally listening to their conversation and recording it. This was undeniable proof that fraud was involved and gave the FBI new leads to follow. First, they began investigating the second person on the line, EG, whose full name was E.G. Jom. They gathered his information and learned that he was a small-time drug dealer who had served 12 years in prison, meaning he had a criminal record. They began wiretapping his calls, and this is when doors began opening for them. E.G. Jom was clearly distributing the game cards to different people. He wasn't just handing out the $1 million card, he was also giving out winning cards worth $10,000, $25,000, $100,000, and even car and big prize cards. He communicated with multiple individuals, acting as a coordinator or intermediary. However, it was clear he wasn't the mastermind because E.G. often mentioned the person mentioned at the beginning of the story, Uncle Jerry, the person the informant had told the FBI about. E.G. frequently referred to Uncle Jerry in his conversations. "Uncle Jerry is going to bring the card," or "I'll meet Uncle Jerry on such and such day," or "Don't make Uncle Jerry angry." He constantly repeated the name. Now the agents had to figure out who this Uncle Jerry was. By the way, E.G. never called Uncle Jerry directly, or perhaps he did, but from a different number. It seemed Uncle Jerry was cautious. The agents obtained the call records of all the previous winners, especially those who had won $1 million, and began searching for a common number that all the winners had called. Back then, there were no computerized records, so everything was printed, making the search harder and more time-consuming. But after reviewing the records, they noticed a number that appeared repeatedly among different winners. It was a number that winners called in the days leading up to receiving their prize and in the days after receiving it, and then the calls to this number would stop completely. To be precise, it wasn't just one number, but several numbers registered under one person. This person's official name was Jerome Jacobson, but he was better known as Jerry Gibbs, or as his associates called him, Uncle Jerry. The shocking discovery the FBI made was that this man was the head of security at Simon Marketing, the company contracted by McDonald's to run the Monopoly game. When the agents identified this person, they said, "Yes, we've caught the snake's head." Immediately, they began wiretapping all his calls, and at the same time, they started investigating his background and past. They discovered that he had been a police officer, but left the force due to illness. Being a former police officer made him qualified to become the head of security at Simon Marketing. Of course, the FBI wasn't about to storm into Simon Marketing and arrest Uncle Jerry right away. They needed to uncover the details of the operation and build a strong case against him. They needed to figure out how he was stealing the winning cards. The FBI requested McDonald's assistance to understand the details and procedures followed by Simon Marketing in managing the game, how they printed the cards, how they distributed them, and what their security measures were. Surprisingly, even McDonald's management itself didn't have these details. So one of the managers arranged a meeting with Simon Marketing to gather all the necessary information about the game and pass it on to the FBI. Ironically, McDonald's own management had hired an external company without fully understanding how that company managed the game they were spending hundreds of millions of dollars on. Anyway, with the cooperation of the FBI, one of McDonald's senior executives visited Simon Marketing, met with him, and gathered all the details, procedures, and steps they followed. Indeed, the procedures confirmed that they took the matter seriously and had excellent security measures in place to protect the game. First, regarding printing, Simon Marketing had contracted with an external printing company called the Brothers Diddle Printing Company, which had very high security measures. First, the printing facility had round-the-clock guards. Any employee or person entering had to pass by the guards and have an ID or entry permit. Before entering, they had to write their name, provide their information, sign, and note the time. Even daily employees had to go through these procedures. Then, to enter the actual printing area, they had to pass through a second security gate and have a different permit to access the printing zone. Beyond these security gates, the entire facility was filled with alarm systems and surveillance cameras. These were the standard procedures that occurred daily. When it came to printing the winning cards, the ones with the big prizes, the procedures became even stricter. For the important cards, there was a gate with 2 locks that had to be opened by employees with different codes to access the area where the significant cards were printed. On the day of printing, representatives from Simon Marketing were present in the printing facility to witness the important cards being printed. Of course, Uncle Jerry was among the monitors sent by Simon Marketing because he was the head of security at the company. After the important cards were printed, they were placed in a briefcase. This briefcase was literally handcuffed to Uncle Jerry's wrist, but it still had a lock. Half the code to open the lock was with Uncle Jerry, and the other half was with an independent accountant. This accountant would always accompany him until the cards were delivered. The briefcase was then shipped via trucks, which were sealed with special stickers like seals. Monitors from Simon Marketing, along with Uncle Jerry and the independent accountant, would fly to the same destination as the trucks. The destinations varied, meaning there were several cities across America with factories that printed the packaging. There, the cards were affixed to boxes, cups, and other packaging materials. Regarding the important cards, the ones with high-value prizes, representatives from Simon Marketing and additional monitors from the Diddle Printing Company personally oversaw the distribution of these cards onto the boxes and envelopes. Uncle Jerry would arrive carrying the briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. He would enter his half of the code, and then the accountant would enter her half, opening the briefcase in front of everyone. Inside the briefcase was an envelope labeled with a number of cards inside. The envelope had a special seal. If tampered with or opened, it would be immediately noticeable. Uncle Jerry himself would open the envelope and take out the cards while everyone watched. The cards were then taken and randomly affixed to the packaging as it moved along the production line. In theory, no one was supposed to know exactly where these cards ended up. Later, customers would buy the meals and see if they got lucky enough to find a winning card. But how did McDonald's ensure that the card was indeed genuine when a winner came forward? The high-value cards had specific features to prevent forgery. For example, certain letters, like the letter K, might be slightly cut off. The most important feature was that a unique code was written on the card with invisible ink, visible only under ultraviolet light. In short, no one could forge these cards. As you can see, the process was complex and had strong security measures. Despite Uncle Jerry being in the middle of the process, the FBI was baffled and couldn't figure out how he managed to steal the cards with so many people monitoring the process. To uncover the secret, they had to continue their investigation. They were wiretapping Michael Hoover, the first winner we talked about, as well as E.G. Jom, the intermediary who seemed to recruit people and give them the cards. Uncle Jerry was the mastermind behind the entire operation. On top of these three, they were also wiretapping several other winners of the $1 million prize from past years. But none of these wiretaps yielded any useful information. At this point, the agents realized they needed to try something different. They came up with a new idea: to contact previous winners through McDonald's and tell them there's going to be a celebration gathering all the past $1 million winners in Las Vegas, a city of entertainment. Of course, there was no real celebration or gathering planned. It was just a ruse. The idea was to lure the winners under the pretext of a marketing event. McDonald's was organizing a big celebration, bringing together all the past contest winners over the years. They would take them to Las Vegas, fly them first class, book luxury hotels, dine at high-end restaurants, host events, and give them the time of their lives, all on McDonald's dime as part of their marketing campaign. Naturally, most of the winners agreed to participate, which meant the ploy succeeded. After they agreed, the FBI told them, "But as part of this event and marketing campaign, we need to film interviews with you beforehand. These interviews will be shown during the activities in Las Vegas." They assured the winners that the interviews would be light and casual, asking how they won the prize and what happened afterward. One of the past winners they interviewed was Buddy Fisher, a man who was unusually nervous during the interview. He stumbled over his words and tried to fabricate a coherent story, but his speech came out disjointed due to his nerves. He was sweating profusely, his face turning into a pool of sweat. The reason, of course, was that he was lying and trying to fabricate a story like Michael Hoover did at the beginning of the video. But Michael Hoover, at least, managed to keep his composure and tell a convincing lie. Poor Buddy Fisher, however, couldn't string two words together. During the interview, he kept saying, "Sorry, forgive me. I'm not used to cameras and these kinds of things," pretending his nervousness was due to the filming rather than lying. Despite Buddy Fisher's inability to say anything useful, he led the FBI to an important man in the operation. Buddy Fisher was the father of a woman named Robin Colombo. This woman was married to a man named Jerry Colombo. Yes, this was another Jerry, not Uncle Jerry. Jerry Colombo was one of the winners of one of the valuable cards. It wasn't the $1 million card, but it was a car prize. He even appeared in one of McDonald's commercials after winning. In reality, Jerry Colombo played an important role in managing the operation and worked directly with Uncle Jerry. He was the first and largest intermediary who took the cards from Uncle Jerry and distributed them to others. Uncle Jerry didn't have a large network of contacts. Initially, he distributed some cards to acquaintances and people close to him, but then he needed someone new to distribute the cards to maintain distance between the winners. If people noticed connections between the winners, the scheme would be exposed. Uncle Jerry met Jerry Colombo by chance at an airport. Jerry Colombo wasn't an ordinary person because his family, Colombo family, was one of the most famous Italian mafia families in America. If you search for the biggest mafia families in America, 5 families will come up. including the Colombo family. The Colombo family was extensive and branched, and Jerry Colombo had a wide network of contacts both within and outside the family. He was the perfect intermediary to distribute the cards. The agreement between him and Uncle Jerry was that Uncle Jerry would sell the $1 million cards for $50,000 each, and Jerry Colombo would handle the rest, distributing them to the appropriate people. You might pause here and ask, wait, Uncle Jerry was taking only $50,000 from the $1 million? Wasn't that a small amount? Several factors were at play. First, Uncle Jerry could now sell the cards continuously to Jerry Colombo without having to personally find buyers, which provided convenience. Second, the $1 million prize wasn't paid in one lump sum. McDonald's distributed the prize over 20 years, paying the winner $50,000 annually until the $1 million was complete. Additionally, the winner had to pay taxes on a prize, leaving them with approximately $35,000 annually after taxes. All these factors made Uncle Jerry willing to accept $50,000 per card. He also sold other cards, like those worth $10,000, $25,000, $100,000, and even car and boat prizes. Uncle Jerry sold these cards at varying prices depending on the prize value and ease of collection. For instance, a car prize was collected immediately, unlike the $1 million prize, which required a 20-year wait. Therefore, Uncle Jerry might charge a higher amount for a car card compared to a $1 million card. I hope the picture is becoming clearer. As for Jerry Colombo, when he chose someone from his circle or acquaintances, he would take 50% of the prize value for a limited period, usually 5 years. For example, for the $1 million prize, he would take 50% for 5 years. Sometimes, the agreement varied depending on the closeness of the person to him. Jerry Colombo handled the amounts and decided how much to take from each person he gave a card to. Jerry Colombo initially distributed the cards to people close to him, then expanded to extended relatives, friends of friends, and people further removed. Eventually, he tried to ensure that the winners weren't obviously related. However, his wife Robin noticed that he always chose white men from the same region. She suggested, "Why don't you diversify? I know someone who might be suitable." Her friend was named Gloria Brown, an African-American woman living in Florida. Gloria Brown was a single mother with a young son, and their circumstances were difficult. When Robin Colombo proposed the idea to her, Gloria felt it was her chance to change her life completely. However, Gloria was hesitant and unsure what to do. The only solution in front of her was to take out a loan and mortgage her house to secure the funds. But now imagine, was it reasonable for her to hand over such a large amount to someone she barely knew in exchange for a card she wasn't even sure was legitimate? True, she knew his wife, but their relationship wasn't that close. Gloria was deeply conflicted, but eventually she felt this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and would regret it if she let it slip away. She took the loan, mortgaged her house, and met Jerry Colombo, handing him the money in the street. It was like a shady deal. Gloria recalled that she had never held that much cash, $50,000, in her hands before, and giving it to someone in this manner was painful and terrifying. By the way, Jerry Colombo told her that he would take the money and return with a card later, as he had to purchase it from Uncle Jerry. Indeed, it was a foolish move for Gloria to hand over such a large amount to a stranger without receiving anything in return except mere words. But many people are easily scammed if the con artist knows what they're doing. Fortunately for Gloria, Jerry Colombo wasn't a scammer, and it was in his interest to return with a $1 million card so she could claim the prize and he could collect his share. A few days later, Jerry returned with a $1 million card. He took her to a McDonald's branch, had her hand over the card as if she had one, and everything went smoothly. McDonald's took the card, verified it, and announced her as the new $1 million winner. But as soon as she received the first payment of $50,000, Jerry immediately took half $25,000 from her. Keep in mind that taxes applied to this amount, and all the taxes were Gloria's responsibility. From the $50,000 she received, she had to pay around $15,000 in taxes, and Jerry Colombo took $25,000, leaving her with only $10,000. This arrangement continued for 5 years. You might say, what's the problem? She's still earning $10,000 annually. She's not losing anything. The issue was that she had taken out a loan, which consumed the remaining $10,000 and even added interest. In reality, Gloria was losing money during those early years, struggling to survive and support herself and her son. Jerry Colombo never helped or understood her situation and would threaten her, saying, "If you don't pay me, bad things will happen to you." In the end, Jerry Colombo was a mafia man, and the entire scheme was uncovered by the FBI. Gloria faced legal consequences and had to repay even the portion Jerry Colombo had taken. All these matters would be resolved later in the story. The bottom line was that Gloria ended up not breaking even but in debt. As for Jerry Colombo, he took his share from her and others. Quickly, large sums accumulated, and he became wealthy, indulging in the money, distributing it to his family, and spending extravagantly on himself without restraint. At one point, during a flight, Jerry met a flight attendant named Lee Casano at the airport counter. She was of Italian descent, and they began chatting and flirting. Their relationship developed, and they continued communicating regularly. Eventually, Jerry began cheating on his wife with her, and they started a relationship. He would visit her, spend lavishly on her, and buy her expensive things. This affair lasted for several months. At one point, Jerry offered her a winning McDonald's card worth $100,000, which was paid directly in full. After giving her the card, McDonald's sent her a check for $100,000. When she went to withdraw the check from the bank, Jerry was standing right there. As soon as she received the cash, he took it from her, saying, "I'll pay off some people and return the rest to you later." Lee was frightened because she was the one who had received the $100,000, and this amount was subject to a tax of about $30,000, a significant amount. She would be legally accountable to the tax authorities for this amount. Initially, she had fears, but these fears multiplied when Jerry started brushing her off whenever she called to ask about the money and taxes. He would say, "Later, later. Don't worry, I'll give you the money." His tone with her grew increasingly harsh every day until he became irritated whenever she brought up the topic. From this point onward, Jerry Colombo's life began to spiral downward. On one occasion, while talking to his secret mistress, the flight attendant on the phone, his wife overheard him. She stormed in, snatched the phone from him, and began screaming at the woman and at him. She flipped out and even threatened to call the FBI and expose him. From that moment on, their relationship deteriorated further, and conflicts between them escalated. Although they had a child together, which might have been why Robin didn't leave him or follow through on her threats, tensions remained high. Later, Jerry Colombo got involved in another scheme. He attempted to open a nightclub, bar, and dance venue. He began hiring women and dancers, leading to problems with the government. The government tried to shut down his club multiple times, but each time he reopened under a different name or method. He even registered the club as a church to circumvent the laws. He appeared on TV multiple times discussing his ventures, and sometimes people would criticize him during live calls for disguising a nightclub as a church. Even Uncle Jerry disapproved of his media exposure, fearing it might jeopardize their business. Jerry Colombo's nightclub venture further strained his relationship with his wife, Robin, who accused him of being a pimp and associating with dancers. Imagine that one day, while driving with their young son in the backseat asleep, they got into a heated argument about these same issues. Suddenly, their son woke up screaming. In the chaos, Robin, who was driving, crashed into a truck. After the accident, emergency services, paramedics, and the police arrived. Both Robin and the boy survived with minor injuries, but Jerry Colombo, due to his large size, sustained severe internal bleeding and was rushed to intensive care. He lingered for a few days before passing away in 1998, 3 years before the FBI began investigating the case in 2001. Jerry Colombo's death might have been a positive outcome for many winners like Gloria Brown, who'd been paying him 50% annually. However, one of the biggest victims of this situation was his secret mistress, a flight attendant, who never got her money back and was left with a $30,000 tax debt. Jerry Colombo's family, particularly his brother Frank Colombo and his mother Ma Colombo, along with other relatives, were furious with Robin, his wife. Some even accused her of causing the accident intentionally due to their conflicts. Robin denied this and cut ties with them. She took her son, but Jerry's mother, Ma Colombo, objected and wanted custody of the boy. Fortunately for the grandmother, Robin got involved in other legal troubles, including drug charges and check fraud, and was imprisoned. After Jerry's death, their house was robbed and everything was stolen: furniture, belongings, jewelry, everything. To this day, the thief remains unknown, but considering Jerry Colombo's mafia connections, it's likely many people were waiting to strike. Robin refused to live a lifestyle lower than what she had enjoyed with her husband, so she turned to fraud and tried issuing checks without sufficient funds. She also got involved in drugs and was eventually caught and imprisoned. Custody of the boy went to his grandmother, as she had wished. You might wonder what these details have to do with the story and why we're digressing so much. Trust me, these details are crucial to the story, so keep them in mind. We'll return to them later. Now let's go back to Uncle Jerry. After Jerry Colombo's death in 1988, they had worked together for about 8 years. But now Uncle Jerry needed new intermediaries to distribute the cards. One of the intermediaries he found was a man named E.G. Gloom, the same person who gave the card to Michael Hoover, the first winner we discussed. E.G. Gloom had a criminal record and had served 12 years in prison for drug dealing. He was a small-time dealer, but this conviction landed him in jail. Shortly after his release, one of his acquaintances, who knew Uncle Jerry, introduced him to the scheme. E.G. Gloom immediately agreed, even though he had just gotten out of prison. Within a short time, he became one of Uncle Jerry's largest intermediaries and distributors. However, he wasn't the only intermediary. Through wiretapping, the FBI learned about another intermediary named Dwight Baker. Dwight Baker's story began when he met Uncle Jerry through a construction business. He was a contractor and had built a house or farm for Uncle Jerry, leading to their acquaintance and strengthening their relationship. Eventually, Uncle Jerry offered him a $1 million card, but the condition was that he pay $100,000 up front. Dwight Baker was interested in the card, but didn't have $100,000. He told Uncle Jerry, "I don't have $100,000, but I think I know someone who does." Uncle Jerry reassured him, "Don't worry, this person is trustworthy and close to me." Dwight Baker approached his adopted son, George Chandler, who wasn't his biological son, but had raised him since childhood. Dwight told George, "Look, son, I have a great opportunity for you." When George asked what it was, Dwight fabricated a story saying, "I have a friend going through a divorce who won a $1 million card in McDonald's Monopoly game. He doesn't want to claim the card because he doesn't want his wife to take half the price. He's willing to sell it for $100,000. Over there in America, when couples divorce, each party gets half of the assets and money, even if only one spouse worked and earned the money." So Dwight presented the story to his son in a twisted way, not revealing that the person was selling the card. He said, "This person is going through a divorce and needs $100,000 in cash." George saw the opportunity as viable and profitable, even though he'd have to wait 20 years to receive the full prize, with high taxes. He figured he could recoup the $100,000 within 3 or 4 years and start making a profit, an attractive investment. He agreed, and the deal was done. George Chandler became the new $1 million winner, and McDonald's organized a celebration for him at one of their restaurants. Dwight Baker didn't gain anything from this card since he didn't take any percentage from his son. However, the allure of money tempted him, and he began working as an intermediary for Uncle Jerry, finding people and selling them cards. As a contractor, he had a network of wealthy contacts who could afford to buy these cards. Through wiretapping, the FBI learned about Dwight Baker and began tapping his calls as well. From these conversations, they discovered that Dwight and Uncle Jerry were planning to meet soon. They set up a sting operation and filmed them exchanging money and cards. These were real shots from the sting, intended solely for evidence. By this point, the FBI felt they had gathered enough evidence to build a strong case against the suspects, with Uncle Jerry at the top. They identified all parties involved in the fraud and had a clear understanding of nearly everything. The only unclear aspect was how Uncle Jerry had been stealing the cards despite the stringent security measures we discussed earlier. However, this wasn't essential to the case. The evidence they had was sufficient to prosecute him, and they were confident they could extract a confession and the necessary details from Uncle Jerry himself. On August 21, 2001, the arrest began. Around 8 people were arrested, including Uncle Jerry and intermediaries like E.G. Gloom and Dwight Baker. The winners themselves weren't immediately arrested. Instead, FBI agents were sent to their homes to interrogate them. This all happened simultaneously, with coordination between different FBI offices across various states. For the winners who were visited by investigators, those who refused to cooperate would likely have been arrested, but none of them resisted or refused to collaborate. Following this wave of arrests, the case was exposed in the media, causing a huge scandal. The names and photos of those involved were revealed, with Uncle Jerry at the forefront. Unsurprisingly, Uncle Jerry hired a strong lawyer to defend him. After the massive scandal, McDonald's issued an official apology to its customers, vowing to take responsibility and rectify the situation. Additionally, they immediately terminated their contract with Simon Marketing, the company responsible for managing the game. In the aftermath of the scandal, all companies that had contracted Simon Marketing also ended their agreements, leading to the company's collapse almost overnight. Its stock price plummeted from $100 to just 50 cents per share, marking one of the largest single-day stock collapses in history. As for the Brothers Diddle Printing Company, which handled the printing of the cards, the FBI raided their facilities to seize any evidence they could find. That printing company also collapsed after the case, essentially destroyed alongside Simon Marketing. Literally, Uncle Jerry had ruined the livelihoods of hundreds of people. Uncle Jerry's lawyer advised him not to confess or cooperate with the prosecution unless they guaranteed him a reduced sentence. A crime of this magnitude could easily land him in prison for 20 years. In response, the prosecution offered a deal. If Uncle Jerry confessed fully, cooperated completely, and revealed all details and individuals involved in the scheme, they would request the judge to reduce his sentence. Uncle Jerry accepted the deal, confessed everything, and disclosed precisely how he had stolen the winning cards. If you recall, we previously discussed how the winning cards were distributed after being taken from the printing facility. Uncle Jerry carried the important cards in a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. The briefcase required 2 codes to open, one half known by Uncle Jerry and the other by the independent accountant who always accompanied him. Through interrogations, the FBI confirmed that the accountant had no involvement in the fraud. After retrieving the cards from the printing facility, as we mentioned earlier, Uncle Jerry and the accountant traveled by plane to various cities where factories produced boxes and packaging. During these trips, they passed through airports. Naturally, Uncle Jerry couldn't bring the accountant into the restroom with him, so he found a way to learn the second half of the code that opened the briefcase, likely by observing the accountant entering it. Thus, Uncle Jerry now knew the full code to unlock the briefcase. However, even after opening the briefcase, there was still the issue of the envelope inside, which had a special seal. If the seal were tampered with or removed, it would be immediately obvious that the envelope had been opened. So what did Uncle Jerry do? Simply put, he took out a knife, carefully cut the seal, and removed the valuable cards inside. Cards containing prizes such as $1 million, $100,000, cars, and more. He then replaced those cards with ordinary ones that had no real value, or very low value prizes like free meals. Uncle Jerry knew exactly how many cards to replace because the number was written on the envelope. Now, everything seemed fine except for the seal. How did Uncle Jerry solve this problem? Quite simply, he had access to identical seals used by Simon Marketing. According to his statements, he received a package by mistake from Simon Marketing that contained these seals. Many doubted his story, but no one could prove he was lying. Personally, I believe he probably obtained the seals through an employee or someone within the company and fabricated the story about the mistaken package to protect that person. However, this is merely speculation. After swapping the cards in the restroom, Uncle Jerry would reseal the envelope with a new seal, making it look untouched. He then returned to the group, proceed as normal, and distribute the fake cards in front of monitors from Simon Marketing and the Brothers Diddle Printing Company. Everyone believed these were the genuine winning cards because they had seen the sealed envelope opened in front of them. With Uncle Jerry's confession, nearly everything came to light. Authorities confirmed the names of the winners, most of whom were already known to the FBI, and charges were filed against 53 individuals who had participated in the scheme over the years. Of those 53, all but 7 admitted guilt and acknowledged purchasing the stolen cards. One of the 7 who denied knowledge of the scheme was George Chandler, whose adoptive father, Dwight Baker, had offered him a card under the false pretense of a divorcing friend selling it. Initially, George Chandler was found guilty, but he appealed the decision, and the case remained in court until he was acquitted in 2004. Still, his reputation in business suffered greatly during those years, largely due to his adoptive father, Dwight Baker. Understandably, George was furious with Dwight for a long time, though they eventually reconciled and forgave each other. Most of the remaining winners didn't receive prison sentences but were placed under house arrest for about a year or 2. Additionally, the court ordered them to return all the money they had received from the fraudulent winnings. Those unable to pay immediately were required to make monthly payments until the debt was settled. Even the intermediaries, like Dwight Baker, avoided prison but were placed under house arrest and required to pay substantial amounts in monthly installments. The fact that no one knew where Uncle Jerry got the cards and that he never informed anyone mitigated their culpability. They couldn't be treated as direct co-conspirators, although that was essentially what they were. The only person who went to prison as a result of the case was Uncle Jerry. Due to his cooperation with the prosecution, he was sentenced to just 3 years in prison. However, he was also ordered to pay $12 million in restitution, but this amount was to be paid in comfortable monthly installments of $370. Realistically, he will likely die before paying off even $100,000. Moreover, it's highly probable that Uncle Jerry has hidden significant sums of cash, possibly burying millions somewhere. To this day, he still owns a nice house, maintains a tidy lifestyle, drives luxury cars, and lives comfortably with his 7th wife. Yes, you read that right. Uncle Jerry married 7 times. Many feel that Uncle Jerry never truly received appropriate punishment, especially considering the devastation he caused. Countless lives were ruined, particularly those of employees from Simon Marketing and the Brothers Diddle Printing Company, whose businesses collapsed. Even the fraudulent winners, like Gloria Brown, faced financial ruin. Gloria, for example, hadn't finished repaying the loan she took out to buy the card, and now she also had to repay the prize money along with additional monthly fees to cover taxes and debts. To salvage their reputation after the scandal, McDonald's announced they would distribute $25 million, the approximate amount stolen through the fraud, to random customers. With that, the case was officially closed. But one question lingered. Who was the informant who initially tipped off the FBI and set the entire investigation in motion? You might recall the flight attendant who was romantically involved with Jerry Colombo, the mafia member. Remember how he left her saddled with a $30,000 tax debt after taking the $100,000 prize? After Jerry Colombo died in the car accident, the flight attendant realized she was in serious trouble. She went to the IRS and confessed everything she knew to save herself. While she didn't know all the details, she revealed what she did know. Surprisingly, after her confession, no one contacted her or pursued further action regarding her unpaid taxes. She assumed she was the whistleblower who started the entire investigation, but here's the catch. The IRS in America is a federal agency with its own investigators, budget, and authority to conduct large-scale investigations. They wouldn't have handed over such a high-profile case to the FBI without claiming credit for it. Recall that the original informant directly called the FBI and provided key information, including the name Uncle Jerry. The flight attendant, on the other hand, only contacted the IRS and wasn't aware of Uncle Jerry's role. Therefore, she couldn't have been the whistleblower. So, who was the real informant? The answer came years later when someone from the Colombo family revealed the truth. The actual whistleblower was none other than Ma Colombo, Jerry Colombo's mother and the grandmother of his child. Her motive stemmed from a custody battle over Jerry's son. After Jerry's death, his wife Robin was imprisoned for drug charges and check fraud, leaving custody of the boy to Ma Colombo. However, as Robin neared the end of her prison term, Ma Colombo feared losing custody again. To prevent this, she contacted the FBI and reported the entire scheme, ensuring Robin stayed in prison longer. During the FBI's investigation, Robin was implicated as an accomplice since she had helped her husband recruit winners and manage parts of the operation. As a direct participant, her sentence was extended. In the end, Ma Colombo achieved her goal. She retained custody of her grandson. Ironically, years later, the family reconciled. Robin, Ma Colombo, and the boy now live together harmoniously, as if nothing ever happened. It seems the passage of time and the boy's efforts played a significant role in healing old wounds. Blood ties, it seems, can eventually overcome hatred and resentment. And so we reach the end of this story, a tale of deception, greed, and betrayal. Within it, we witness smaller stories of human weakness, ambition, and redemption. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more content. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Peace be upon you.